I am, as always, so excited for today's guest because she has a background in psychology. She's a co-parenting expert. She's from Colorado, I think, yes. And she can help you. We often talk about how lawyers sometimes are trained in logic. Logic doesn't work with people like this. Therapists often don't understand the nature of high conflict. I found someone who does. And here she is. I see you, Karalynn. So I'm going to get you on here. How to keep your kids out of the middle, especially when you're dealing with an ex who's super difficult. I can see you.
Okay.
An ex that is super difficult. And I know people make all kinds of assumptions like, well, my ex is a narcissist or my ex is impossible to deal with, but you still have to. So we have to accept that and now learn ways to deal with that. So Dr. Karalynn Royster, thank you so much for coming on. And before we even introduce you, can you answer the question of, is it even possible to have stability in the home when you have a really difficult ex?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. The short answer is yes, in your home. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. You can have stability. You're in charge of your space and what you do with your child in your home. And so, yes, it's possible, right? It's a lot harder, and they make it a lot harder. And it can be very hard to protect that peace, right? But I think it's possible with the right things in
Yeah.
place. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
me too. People have more agency than they think they do,
Yes.
but I think a lot of times the power dynamic terrifies people and
Yeah.
they feel like they have no control over their own lives. So before we get into today's topic, can you officially introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you today. Um, yeah, so my name's Dr. Royster. I'm a practicing child psychologist out here in Colorado in the mountains. I have a therapy practice, and then I also have a coaching business, and that's called Learn with Little House. That's, where you and I are talking today. And the focus of that is co-parenting support for moms in particular that really puts kids first, because moms are really, you know, as much as I would love everyone to have all the support in the world, and I usually am encouraging that quite a bit, they're typically calling because they're worried about their kids, right?
Mhm.
And so I support them with how to get their kids through these tough, stressful situations. And all the while I'm doing that, I'm like, okay, but how are we taking care of you? Who's supporting you, right? And so it does end up being support for moms and kids. But as a child psychologist, that's really where I kind of thrive. Is like, okay, but how do we actually protect the kids through all of this?
Right. Yeah. And so I know that sometimes we think that our kids are doing well because we've tried to shield them from the conflict and what's
Yeah.
happening. But you had said that there's some ways to tell that kids are struggling with the divorce or with the separation. Can you tell us how, as a parent, we might be able to sense that something is really wrong versus just, you know,
Mhm.
dealing with adolescence or developmental issues?
Right, right. And, I think that first, I just want to normalize that in any stressful event, anytime a kid goes through a big change, whether it's we had to move schools, someone really close to them passed away, a grandparent, what have you, or a divorce or separation, you're going to see a period of adjustment, right? You're going to see kids adjust to that. And typically we see that in very behavioral ways. So sometimes that's behavioral acting out, like tantrums or crying more or saying or articulating, like, I miss so and so, or
Mhm.
I wish you guys didn't live in different houses. Those ones are pretty easy to spot, right?
Yeah, that's
And
overt.
then, yeah, of course. And then there's the type that's a little bit more under the radar where you're sort of like, maybe this is related to that, maybe, right?
Hmm.
And those are often things like not sleeping well, regressions in like potty training. We were trained, now we're not. Separation anxiety.
Hmm.
We've never had a problem going to school, and now all of a sudden we do. For our older kids, it looks like school problems.
Mhm.
failing, not turning in assignments, getting, the teacher's like, what's going on? Like, so and so never acts out, and I've had to correct them a bunch of times this week, right? So, anytime there's a big change in a child's world, you would expect to see some of that, right?
Mhm.
We know from the research that kids take about 2 years to return to baseline post separation
Wow.
divorce,
Two
right?
years.
It
I
can be.
noticed 2 years with my own kids as well.
Yeah, it can be, and so some of that is really normative, right? It makes sense. We get it, right? When we get concerned is when it starts to feel to parents like, ooh, this is a little bit
Mhm.
bigger. This is a little more intense, or this is lasting a little bit longer than I think it should, right?
Mhm.
So maybe, transitions are hard kind of here and there, but in general, we're doing okay. But now it's been every transition
Mhm.
for 3 months,
Mhm.
right? Or now it takes 2 days for them to return to sort of their typical regulated self. And it used to take a couple hours, right?
Yeah.
So you're looking for that sort of intuitive sense as a parent of something's not okay here,
Like it's
right? We're not
not getting a little bit better.
right. And the things you're trying aren't very effective, right? So there's all kinds of, I'm sure you guys have a lot of things written. I have a lot of things written. There's a lot of free resources about
Mhm.
how to support kids. So you're trying some of those transition tricks. You're trying to talk to the teachers. You've had conversations with your kid, and it still feels like we're not totally moving forward. Like those things aren't helping.
Mhm.
Okay. That's usually time to bring in another person, right?
Yeah.
And just see what they think.
Yeah. I was going to say one of the things that came up a lot for actually my partner Chris when he was little, when his parents separated and he was 12, and then with his own son was major stomach issues. And the doctors
Mm,
didn't find anything wrong, but stomach issues to the point where it was like, I don't want to go to school. Is there
yes.
something
Yeah.
with the stomach that's different than
Yeah.
other
Well,
parts of the body?
I think you've kind of stumbled onto a huge area of research. So they're starting to call the stomach like our second brain
Hmm.
because so many serotonin receptors, which is the part that does like your happy chemicals in your brain, are housed there and are actually really connected. And so your mental health is very connected to your physical health,
Hmm.
very. And psychologists call that somatic complaints. It just basically means the body's manifestation of a psychological distress, right?
Hmm.
And so this is a very common one we hear with kids is my tummy hurts or I
Yeah.
have a headache. That's the other one I hear a lot, or I think I'm going to be sick. Okay.
Really? That's
Yeah, and
again the stomach thing,
it's the
maybe.
stomach, and the
Hmm.
stomach is really, and so, I think for a lot of parents, I say, yeah, it's very possible their stomach could hurt, right?
Hmm.
It's you get those days. They might be backed up, they might be getting a bug, they might actually be sick, they might be a little worried, right? But if it's every day,
Hmm.
right, and you've checked it out with your pediatrician and
That's what
you've
I'm
kind
talking
of
about.
done the medical pieces, then it's time to start connecting for your child that perhaps this is your body's way of telling you that you're a little bit
Hmm.
stressed, right? And we all have those. So for me, it's a feeling like I'm going to throw up. That's how
Hmm.
I know I'm getting activated. I feel it. I even like touch my chest, right? I feel it right here.
Yeah.
Some people, it's like my head starts to pound. Some people, it's like I get flushed. We all have these things that our body is telling us,
Hmm.
and it's our job to listen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's hard. That's hard to teach your
Yeah.
kids. Mhm.
Yeah. And also, I wanted to just say something to a comment you made earlier about separation anxiety. I think people assume that only happens with little kids, but we have clients with teenagers who are starting to feel separation anxiety, wanting to only be at home with one parent.
Yeah.
We just got off with a client who said her daughter doesn't want her friends to hug her. She only wants her mom to hug her. Another client whose daughter wants the parent in the therapy session is like, I can talk to the therapist when you're here, but I don't want you to leave. Do you see that as well with older kids?
I do. And I'll tell you where I see it a lot is in two ways that I see it manifest a lot. not wanting, much older kids not wanting to sleep
Hmm.
alone, wanting to have
Yeah.
somebody lay with them. Like we're talking pretty older kids that not like a little 3 or 4 year old
Right.
that's like, mommy, will you lay with
Yeah.
me? Right. So not wanting to sleep, not wanting to be alone in certain levels of the
Hmm.
house. Right. Um, and then when they are away, I see a lot of checking in. So these are parents that are getting texts like every hour. How you doing, mom? Are you coming to get me? I don't feel so good, right? And the parents
Hmm.
having to respond. There's a lot of like staying connected when apart. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I see
Wow.
it kind of present in those three ways quite often, I would say.
When you said the thing about sleep, like that is a huge issue with our
Yeah.
clients, and sometimes it's weaponized against
Oh,
them
yeah.
because of the
Yes.
whole issue with becoming a bit enmeshed,
Hmm.
parentifying kids, or the opposite, infantilizing them, treating them like they're older or younger
Or
or peers.
getting your comfort from
Yes,
them, right?
yes. So
I
it's
don't want to sleep alone,
creepy.
so
Yeah,
that's a real tricky dynamic.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
very hard because we definitely. I was reading a book by Bill Eddy.
Ah,
I don't
me
know if
too.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
love Bill Eddy.
me too.
We've interviewed him too, but he was talking about how if you have an active case, unless your child is an infant in our culture, and I'm talking from America, because I know other cultures are different, but it's important not to have the child in the bed with you because it can be interpreted in different ways, not just legally, but it could affect your child too. So it's
Yeah,
very tricky.
which is so co-sleeping is so interesting because it's such a culture bound
Mhm.
behavior, right? And from an attachment perspective, especially with young kids, like there's people have such strong opinions, is what I would
Mhm.
say.
Yeah,
But yes, it is very, I have seen it used against parents tons of times,
us
right?
too.
There is
Hmm.
nothing suspicious happening. It's just a kid that doesn't want to be away and wants to sleep in mom's bed or in dad's bed. And we've got all kinds of allegations flying now,
Yep, yep.
right? And that's why I think Bill Eddy gives that advice is because it's such a hot button place where you could get misinterpreted, right?
Yes,
Something could
great word.
it could be used against you so quickly that it's in some of these really high conflict dynamics, it's like you just don't want to do that.
Right,
You just shouldn't do that,
right.
right?
While you're under that quartz microscope, we say, like, just don't even
Even
put yourself in a
after.
position to muddy issues. Yeah.
Yeah, even after. I mean, it can get, and what's so hard, this is exactly why I do this work because that legal perspective, that perspective of wanting to protect your child or thinking with that lens is in sometimes in direct opposition with what your child needs,
Right,
right?
right.
In if you were just a typical patient and you were like, my kid can't sleep unless I lay down with them, there's a good chance that I would say, well, lay with them and
Hmm.
then work towards getting out of their room. Like work towards building
Like
that independence. That's
slowly,
what they need right
gradually.
now.
Mhm.
Yes. But when you add in this other legal element, you can't say those things. And so the child, what's good for the kid and what's good for you legally and ethically and financially, all the
Mhm.
pieces, may be in direct opposition of each other.
Yeah,
And that's really hard.
it is,
That's really, really hard for
especially when you
parents.
have a protective parent who's healthy and an abusive parent, and you
Yes.
just are, what do I do?
Hmm.
Like everything
Hmm.
I do is wrong.
Yes. Yes. Everything I do is wrong, and everything I do is under a microscope.
Mhm.
And everything, even if it's well intentioned, is going to get thrown back at me.
Right,
Right? Are you grooming our child? No, I
right,
wasn't. Right? There's just a lot of it's that's where it gets really, really challenging. Is sometimes what parents know is best is not what they can do.
right, right. Because they have to protect themselves while in the system too. So it's so hard. So speaking of that, what are some mistakes that you've seen people make in the midst of this, where they are unintentionally increasing stress for their kids, or,
Yeah.
maybe in their case, like, what do people think? Oh, I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, So the biggest one I see is everybody knows not to talk poorly about your co-parent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of people really take that to heart, and that's good. I like that. I like that you're really thinking with that lens. But what it turns into, and when it becomes a big mistake, is when that becomes, I'm just not going to talk about them at all.
Mm-hmm.
And when something comes at me that I probably should help my child sort of think critically about or question, I don't say anything
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not allowed to say anything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that comes from two places. It comes from either if I say something, I'm going to say something rude,
Mm-hmm.
or I really don't want to mess up my kid by putting them in the middle. And so I'm just going to be the better person and just not say anything. And
Mm-hmm.
that can end up really hurting kids,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Because
tell
they're
us
here.
why. Because
Yeah.
because when we just said the thing about everything I do is wrong, I think
Yes.
that, and that's gonna be the title of this, by the way. Great.
Love it.
But feeling like if I'm not perfect, I'm gonna get in trouble. If I do
Mm-hmm.
one thing that's gonna be turned against me, like I'm gonna lose my kids. So I'm
Well,
just not gonna say anything.
here's the truth of that. You and I both know there's a reality to that for some parents. There are absolutely things that you can do wrong that you will lose your kid,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are things that can happen and get misinterpreted, right? And and cause a lot of problems for you.
But
However,
most things, it's not most things though.
no, it is, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's not most things. And the people that are trying to work this problem out, the people that are listening to you and me talk about this, who are seeking out our support, those are not the people I'm worried
Right,
about doing those
right,
things, right?
right, right.
It's kind of like when we say like parents or moms are worried about being a good enough
Mhm.
mother. And it's like, well, if you're asking the question, you probably are doing okay,
Because you
right?
care
Shows you
enough to find
care.
out.
Yeah, you're thinking about it, you're educating yourself. Like all these pieces are showing me like you're doing okay. You may not be perfect, but you're doing okay. And
Mhm. You're
so,
trying.
yes, yeah. And so what happens when you don't respond at all is, or you choose to just like way back out of it,
Hmm.
is that your child is bringing something to you almost as a question.
Hmm.
You've done a good enough job of establishing yourself as a safe, secure parent that they can come and say to you, well, I heard dad say this about you. Or I heard
Hmm.
dad say you had an affair and that's why you guys broke up.
Hmm.
It's a great example,
I was just about to say,
right?
great example.
Right. You're not allowed to, and a mom might think, or a dad might think, well, I can't say, well, actually, he's the one that had an affair.
Right,
And that is correct. You cannot say that. But
right.
you can say
You want to, but
something
you can't.
like, but what's actually happening there is your child has heard something about you. It doesn't fit with what they know of you,
Right.
or they're wondering about it, or they're curious. And of course, this depends a lot on the age, right? About how you may choose to respond. But the point is, they've heard it and they're bringing it back to you. And they're saying, hey, mom, I'm using mom because I'm a mom, right?
Hmm.
I heard this. Is this true? Is this accurate? Can I trust you? Do you still love me? These are kind of the constant questions kids are asking,
Hmm.
right? But what that tells me is that you as a parent have done a good job creating a safe place for them to tell you something kind of hard. Maybe
Hmm.
you did have an affair. Maybe you don't want your child to know that.
Hmm.
That's okay. What you want to hold on to in that moment is, wow, I have created such a safe environment that my kid can bring me something a little bit uncomfortable and I can hear it. They're not afraid to tell me what
Hmm.
they heard about
Yeah.
me, right? And so, what we talk to parents about is like rest in that. That's a good thing that you have that safety and security. And then there are times when it's not appropriate to just be like, I'm not going to talk to you about that. There
Hmm.
are times it is, right? An affair may be an example that you say, that is a really grown up conversation. And I'm happy to talk with you about that when we get a little bit older. But it makes sense that you have questions about it,
So you're
right?
validating their feelings.
Yes.
You're saying it makes sense that you have questions,
Yeah,
like I
I
would
get
too.
why you're
Hmm.
curious. Yeah, sorry, I cut you off. I didn't mean to.
No, 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 no. Go ahead.
Right. And you may even say something like, I'm really happy that if you're wondering about that, you brought it to me to
Mhm.
ask. And maybe your kid's a little older, and maybe you do say, listen, some of the things that I did, I'm not proud of. I'm happy to talk to you about it when we get a little bit older. But you just need to know that relationships are never just one sided. Things are much more complicated than that.
Mhm.
We both love you. We both agree that being apart is a better way for
Mhm.
us to parent you, right? You're always bringing it back to them. Okay.
Yeah, and what you just said about how we both agree that being apart is better for us. I was talking to someone recently who said that one of the things that harms kids is their belief that you're going to get back together, that there's still hope, that maybe it's just a fight. So by reiterating, we're not getting back together, but
Mhm.
we still love you. But no.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Lisa, where does that get tricky? You and I have seen this a bunch. When one person is saying, no, we didn't both agree,
Hmm.
or when she comes around, we're going to get back together,
Right.
right?
Or
So
will she or he's responsible for breaking up the intact family? I mean, that
yeah,
was
it's
something my
his
ex
fault.
kept
Yeah.
saying. If you divorce me, the kids are going to think, they're going to know that it's your fault that you broke up our
Mhm.
family that was
Yeah,
doing fine, which wasn't doing fine.
right. So how do you handle when your kid comes back and says, so and so, mom said, you're the reason that we don't have a family anymore,
Hmm.
right? You may, like, that is a very ripe opportunity to be like, well, actually, let me
Right.
tell you what really happened here, right? So what I usually tell parents in that situation is to say something like, sometimes people disagree on what happened, and it's very clear to me that your mom or your dad, whoever your co-parent is is in a different place than I am.
Mm.
But you just need to know that I would never knowingly hurt you. The decisions that I've made are for what's best for us, right? You're subverting the blame. You're not putting it on the other person. You're not talking badly about them. You're actually being kind of compassionate, right? And saying like they're just in a different place, or
Yeah.
we see things differently, or gosh, that was really hard to hear him say that about me, wasn't it?
Mm.
Right? What do you think? Is that what you know of me? Right? Like, is that your experience of us, right? Um, I do want to go back to what you said. I think most kids, even in the most toxic dynamics, harbor a kind of wish that their parents would get back together.
Hmm.
And so it is, to your point, something you have to address quite often.
That's
And
so. I'm
something,
glad you said that. It's
yeah,
not that you just say it
you
once.
can't just say it once. You have to say it a lot. You have to know that that desire is under a lot of things. And then I talk with parents a lot about preparing for new layers of grief. So
Mm.
when you get remarried, when you first start dating, it's not uncommon to see kids struggle again at that point, almost as if the divorce or separation just happened,
Mhm.
because it's kind of like the final nail in the coffin of like,
Mm.
oh, they're really not getting back together.
Yeah.
And I knew that, but now I really know that, you know? And they may
Yeah.
like love their new step parent
Mm.
or whoever it is, right?
Right.
That it has nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
Honestly, it has a lot to do with the grief.
It's so interesting because I separated from my ex when my daughter was 11. And
Mm,
Chris and I have been together for a while. And even though my daughter knew that she didn't want us to get back together, it was, you can imagine the details. But anyway, she didn't want us to get back together. She still was very hesitant about Chris coming to family events with my
yeah.
parents because she said he's not my father. I don't want my father there, but it's like there was
Yeah.
that liminal space, the in between of like,
Oh, I love
I
the
don't
word
want this
liminal.
and I'm not,
Love
I'm not ready
it.
for that yet. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
But
it's
I love how you said
multiple
it's
layers,
like
right? The
the grief. Like we often don't
grief.
associate that word with
Yeah,
children.
I
It's
mean,
like death. It's not usually children and relationships too.
yeah, and it's the grief of that will never be again. My parents will never be together again.
Hmm.
But also, like in your case, the grief of just me and mom will never be together again,
Right.
right? We're entering a new stage. And then there's this like sometimes it gets really sticky because maybe that like maybe your new partner is amazing, right? And that we want that, and the child wants that, and
Yeah.
everybody's like, this is great. But there's another layer of grief of like, but why couldn't my dad do this?
Oh,
Right? Like there's
yeah.
so many sticky, webby things in there,
Right.
right?
Or the new partner is like a better parent to their kids, and I see it in my face on family vacations, and I don't have that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, new partners is like a whole thing because you're also kind of being forced into this relationship, right? Like you as the child don't, and a lot of parents post separation or divorce take a long time. It's very serious before they introduce a partner to their kid, as it should be,
Mhm.
right? But by that time, that person's already around. They're not going anywhere, right? So whether you like them or not as a kid, you've got to be in relationship with this person now, right? And you have all this grief. And so it's just very complicated, um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sticky.
You
It
know, as
is.
you're saying that, there's a psychologist and author. He wrote a book called Rules of Estrangement, and his name is Dr. Josh Coleman. And I
Oh,
interviewed him, and it's a great book.
I'm going to
But
write it
he
down.
talked about how when you're with a new partner, instead of just being like, oh, I love them, like my kids need to meet them and love them too, you have to remember you're the one that chose that person. They didn't.
They didn't.
So they're
No,
not on your timeline. And
no,
I think
they're not.
one of the mistakes, a divorce lawyer in North Carolina, Jonathan Breeden, said that he thinks that one of the biggest mistakes that divorced parents make is introducing kids to new partners too quickly, because kids also get attached to them, and then they feel that same sense of abandonment if when it doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting thought, and I've kind of gone back and forth because I've read a lot of opinions about this. Like, and I think probably you could speak to this more than I, but I've seen some people say like it should be at least a year, it should be 18 months, it should be like I'm not sure you can put a time stamp on it
Yeah.
as much as it is about like, is my kiddo ready? Am I ready? Where's this romantic relationship at?
Mhm.
How litigious and high conflict is my co-parenting dynamic? A
Yeah.
lot of we see a lot of flare-ups in uh what's the word? High conflict situations, I guess.
We call it
Uh
inflection points, like when
Inflection
something happens
points.
with court, or there's some decision that, like, there's a whole flurry of activity, especially focused on the
Yes.
kids by the other parent, often to make it seem like I'm still a good parent even though I had this big loss in court. Like, I still want you to see me. Yeah. So
Yes.
we just
And
made up
and
that
there
term.
are some parents, particularly the ones that are with groups that we work with, right, that have really difficult co-parents. And those individuals often have a very hard time when a new partner is introduced. They
Mhm.
get very threatened, very possessive, very controlling. I don't want you, but I don't want anyone else to have you kind of vibes.
Oh, and the
And
double
things,
standard.
yeah, like it
It's
can
fine for them, but not me.
really heat up quickly. And so you want to make sure you're kind of you can't make decisions based on that person, but you also want to be like thoughtful,
Yeah.
right? About when and how are we doing this,
Right.
right? Because it's definitely going to be a
So
whole shitstorm.
right.
Yeah.
It is
Pardon my
so
language.
complicated. Yeah, I'm glad
Hmm.
you said like there is no exact timeline,
I don't
but
know
you
that
just
there
don't want to do it too
is.
soon.
Yeah.
Unless
Yeah. I don't.
unless your kid like mine got into my phone and I was like, "Who is this?" And I said, "Oh."
Oh, yeah. There we
It worked
go.
out fine. It's been more than 10 years at this point,
Yeah.
but it was like
It did,
I
right?
wanted to wait longer.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was some bumps along the road, and it's the thing with this group that parents need to know is your grief timeline and your healing process is not parallel with your child's. They
Oh,
might be
that's a great
further
line.
along or further ahead. Like we don't
Yeah.
know, everybody's in a different spot. And so you might be ready for something that they're not, right? You
Yeah.
might be ready to like move on, and I'm like single parenting it out here, like doing the best, and they're still really sad,
Yeah.
you know? And that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
hard. It's
It
really
is.
hard.
It is. It's incredibly hard. I mean,
Because
And
it's
how do you,
heartbreaking. You're
it
dealing with
is.
your own and then your child's heartbreak, which to me, I felt their heartbreak more than mine.
Yeah. I think a lot of parents do,
Yeah.
right? This is how they find me. They're worried about their
Hmm.
kids
Same.
instead of, and I'm like, but also, what about you,
Yeah.
honey? Like, what about you? Right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's, it's a, it's the age old parenthood trouble, right? Like what we do for our kids is so much more sometimes than what we would do for
I know.
ourselves.
And again, it's that tricky balance because your kids can be okay, more okay when you're okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
But you
Yeah.
always
I
think
mean,
I first have to
that's
take
the
care of my
truth.
kids. My yeah.
Hmm.
So, but that's lots of big topics in here.
Yeah.
All right. So we always tell our clients, and it is also one of the core values with court, is kids need stability, consistency, and routine. And so when you're dealing with a legal case, we want our clients to focus on how they provide that stability for kids. But how can someone actually provide stability, again, when you're dealing with this ex who does not provide stability, who does the opposite,
Hmm.
who tries to
Hmm.
destroy stability and doesn't care about what's fair or what's best for their kids. They care about themselves.
Right.
So how do you parents navigate that?
Well, I think it's a challenge, right? And I don't recommend you do it alone. I think it's good to have coaches and therapists and people that you can talk to about how you can be achieving those goals, right? Because you are correct. That is what kids need to thrive, 100%. What I talk with parents a lot about is that you're not really in control of what happens
Mhm.
over there being your co-parent's house. You
Yeah.
don't, it might be just total circus, chaos, craziness. And that's really hard and sucks, right? And you get a kid back that's overtired, under medicated, over exhausted, overstimulated, all the things,
Yeah.
right? Your job is to worry about those things: structure, stability, consistency in your home with you and your time. Like that is where you can do it. You can't waste energy and time trying to control what's happening over there
Right.
because it's a losing game. And honestly, will probably make your legal case a lot worse.
I was just
Um,
about to say you're going to look really bad.
you're going to
You're
look
going to look
really
like
bad in court.
controlling, authoritative. So we can't do that.
Yeah, and it doesn't work. If you had the type of co-parenting relationship that was collaborative, then you wouldn't need us, first of
Right.
all. But there are a lot of people that can say, listen, the kids have been crazy. This is what I'm doing. We're moving bedtime up. We're cutting out sugars. We're not going to go to urban air where it's crazy town. Like, here are the things we're doing. And you work together and you support your kids. These are not our
No.
parents. These are not the people we're working with, right? So let's be clear. This is different if you're in a collaborative co-parenting dynamic. Parallel parenting, it really is about, you don't get to have a say over
Right.
there, but you get all the say over here. And
Right.
that is where you can work on emotional stability and predictability and consistency. You have to almost ratchet it up in your house. So being very explicit about, like, these are our expectations, these are our rules. This is how I will always respond to you when you bring, you're having a tantrum. I work a lot with littler kids, if you can't tell. Um, these are my tools. This is kind of what we do. We've been here before. You're not scaring me. I can handle this. We're going to be okay, right? This kind of soft place to land that you can rest in and trust. The piece that I tell parents a lot, though, especially moms, but dads too, is that when you do a good job of that, and when you create that secure, soft place to land, it travels with your kid. It's
Hmm.
like they take a little piece of you with them. That's what we call secure attachment, right? And so that gets to go with them to school. That gets to go with them to that crazy, chaotic other house.
Hmm.
That goes with to grandma and grandpa's, right? Goes with to college, right? That internalized sense that things are going to be okay is something you can cultivate and help them with. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Are there, yeah, of course, of
Hmm.
course. And I love that they could take that with you. So most parents also say that we work with little kids will talk about what can I do to make the transitions easier, especially with younger kids. And I've heard about transitional objects, but then the other parent is like, I don't want you bringing that from your other parent's house. I'm going to throw it out.
Hmm.
Is there anything
Oh,
you can suggest for that? I mean, that's our audience.
I know it's true. Or it's like something really stupid and you're like, what is this scrap of paper? Like, what are
Yeah.
you talking about? Right. And they're like, why didn't you bring that back? Well, because it was trash. But anyways, um, so two ideas. One, a lot of my clients will buy multiple of the transitional object.
Okay.
So there's like 5 stuffies,
Hmm.
10 stuffies. We just have a collection all the time
Yeah.
that if it gets lost, if it doesn't come back, we have one here so that we can use it at our home and then you can take it along, right?
Oh, that's
It
smart.
helps if it's one consistent object, as in, I always take my teddy bear or my stuffed bunny, and I can have like 10 of those.
Hmm.
Some of my kids like to take different things every time. That
Hmm.
gets a little trickier. It's like
Yeah.
this week it's a car, next week it's a spinner. And we just have a conversation with kids about how I'm very happy for you to take that. But if it gets left there, we're going to have to find something else when you get
Mm.
home. Right. So we do a little preparing ahead.
Yeah.
I also sometimes will do something like written on the hand, like I'll draw a heart
Hmm.
in permanent marker or something. And that's the transitional object. It's not an
Mm.
object, but like
A
if you miss
symbol.
me, you can look at your
Yeah.
heart. Yeah.
Right.
We often pair that with the book, The Kissing Hand.
Yes,
It's
I
like a
was
children's book.
thinking about that. I read that to
Yeah.
my kid.
It's
Mhm.
not my idea, someone else's idea, but I love it. And so
Yeah.
that can be really helpful. Um, I think that was what I was going to say. I had another idea. If it comes to me, I'll let
Oh,
you know. But
okay. Yeah.
those were kind of my initial thoughts on
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Um, Tell us about your kids' first co-parenting system. What is that?
Lisa, thank you for asking.
Your favorite question.
It is my favorite question. So, as we've kind of talked a little bit about, I work mostly with moms, right? I'm a mother myself. I think that men, people that identify as men, really need a space to talk about this and to experience it. I think it's very unique, that experience. And so I will send them to folks like you, right? Um, I don't think I can speak to that experience very
Oh,
well.
we
And so I
can.
kind of stay in my lane, and I send them to folks that can. So I work with mothers, typically of young children, who are in these really high conflict situations. And so the Kids First program is designed specifically for that. It is lessons. We have over 100 video lessons
Wow.
that are taught by me, a child psychologist, where I dive deep into all of these things. So it's meant, you can go through it chronologically, but a lot of my moms hop around.
Yeah.
Like, transitions are a nightmare. I want to watch the videos on that. We have a custody eval coming up. I want to watch the videos on that, right?
Mhm.
So you kind of pick and choose. And then the piece that moms really love, that I just love as well, is that we have group coaching calls every week
Mhm.
that are led by me, and other moms are there. People come to them, people don't. You drop in. I have some people that come every week, some
Mhm.
people that I've seen a couple times and then they're kind of good. And it's meant to be, essentially it functions a lot like a support group,
Mhm.
right? This came up this week. I want to talk about it. How would you handle this? What do you think? And not only do you get support from me, but the other moms in the group. That's just a wealth of information that I wish I could keep co-creating for them, because they often will say like, well, I did this, or in my situation, this is what happened, or reach out to this person. And so those are every week for the most part, of course, not holidays and things. And then folks can reach out to me. We have online community and things like that. But the crux of it is that built in time with myself and other moms.
Yeah.
And moms
So
just love it. They
yeah, I
love it.
mean, we also have a support group weekly. It's called the Legal Abuse Support Group. And I always say
Yes.
we do the unusual thing of blending our male and female clients together going
Mhm.
through this. And just like you said, so we have people early in the process, even if they've been at it for a couple of years, but they haven't actually filed or left the
Mhm.
relationship. We call our babies. And then we have our grizzled
Yeah.
veterans who have been at it for a long time. And we love seeing people help each other, and also to have that validation from others who
Mhm.
really understand it, because it sounds like you do something pretty niche too. It can feel very
Yeah.
isolating to go through something like this. And I know a lot of our clients tend to be very successful in other areas of their lives. They're
Yes.
really good at certain things.
Yeah,
And
they're
so there's
smart
that,
people.
yeah.
Hmm.
So there's an additional level of shame to talk about this because they want to be perfect. And it's like, why is
Yes.
this happening? I can't fix it. I can't control it. Like, I'm used
Yeah.
to swooping in and being the superhero, and I'm just losing my mind. So I
Well,
need
and I
help.
think, the other piece that I suspect you and I, what is so important about it is that there's a ton of support on the internet. There's like a bajillion Facebook groups you can
Mhm.
join. What I hear consistently is that those can feel very negative and very venty.
Yes.
And so it's
Trapped in the
good to
trauma
have a
stuff.
place.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of trauma bonding,
Yeah.
right? So it's good to have a place where people are like, yes, this really sucks. And, and here's what we can suggest, right?
Strategies.
Yes. And
That's
you're
what we
not
need.
alone,
Yeah.
right? Like there are other people that are going through this and we can help you,
Right.
right? And that's, I always say to people, and actually both of my places, therapy and my coaching business, is like, I don't promise to have all the answers. And a lot of times I don't, but I do promise to walk along with you
Mhm.
while we figure it out,
Right.
right?
Just like
And
what
that's,
you
there's so
have to
much
do with your
power.
kids, right? It's the same kind of thing. You
Yes,
can't
good,
fix
good
it.
parallel.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you're going to be
But
here
I'm
for
here
that.
with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I may not always know how to answer or what to say or when to say it or how to do it perfectly,
Mhm.
but I promise you we're going to figure it out
Right.
together, you know?
Same.
That's
Oh
so
my,
beautiful.
yes. Well, so how can people find you, Karalynn?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram. Obviously, you and I are on
Yes.
Instagram right
Yes.
now at Learn with Little House.
Hmm.
And I also am on Facebook. I'm less active on Facebook, I'll be honest.
Hmm.
Learn with Little House is my website. That's where we have links. We always have free master classes, free resources on there. And then, of course, a link to the Kids First program. If folks are interested in that, they can email, reach out to me via DM. However you want to get in touch, I welcome it.
I have
So
a
thank you so
feeling you're
much.
going to be hearing from some people now,
I hope so.
later, but absolutely, because what you're doing is exactly what our clients and community need. And it's
Thank
so great to find resources that really, really understand, um, and also help with the
you.
co-parenting stuff.
Yes.
So not just therapeutic, but the co-parenting stuff. So
Yes.
we are going
Yes.
to be talking
I,
again.
I would love to. I would love to
And
anytime, Lisa.
yes, and figuring out how to expand this.
Wonderful.
But thank you so much.
So
And
good to talk.
yes,
Thank you so much.
yes, we'll be in touch soon.
Okay,
All
take
right,
care.
you too. Bye.